Hi there, welcome back to St. Thomas Aquinas for Everyone. I'm Dave Palmer, and thanks again for joining me as we are now continuing in the sacraments. This is video number 2 of the introduction to the sacraments before we get into the actual sacraments themselves. And last time we talked about whether they were necessary and some of the details about them, the words that are spoken, the matter, and why sacraments have to have matter and what are the importances of the words. This video, we're going to talk about just two things: the character and whether it's able to be blotted out once a character of a sacrament is given to a person. And then also, we will lead up to what is the most important of the sacraments. Okay, so let's get right to it. And here is the first graphic that I'm going to show. This is just kind of an introductory graphic, and then we'll get right into it. Whether a sacrament imprints a character on the soul. And you may have heard of some of these ceremonies that people have had where they try to remove the character, remove their baptism. Have you heard about these? People that become atheists and then they were baptized as a child, and so they try to go in and have a ceremony where the character, I guess you could say, of the baptism is removed. And it's interesting because as weird as that seems, or as, why would anybody want to remove their baptismal character? It also shows that they believe that there's something there. There's actually an element of faith there, because they at least believe that something happened that they need to take care of, right? Or they need to get rid of. So let's go back to this and see what Aquinas says. And, here's a baby being baptized. And then we also know the sad, sordid story of Theodore McCarrick, one of the highest level cardinals in the United States Church, and his fall from grace. And I put him up here because he was ordained, he was baptized, he received confirmation, all the sacraments, well, most of them anyways. And, do those remain even though he fell from grace? And Thomas, interestingly here, is going to compare the character of the sacraments to military battle, and a character that soldiers get when they go to battle. And it's very interesting. He says the sacraments of the new law are ordained for a twofold purpose, namely for a remedy against sins and for the perfecting of the soul in things pertaining to the divine worship according to the rite of the Christian life. Now, whenever anyone is deputed to some definite purpose, he is wont to receive some outward sign thereof. Thus, in olden times, soldiers who enlisted in the ranks used to be marked with a certain character on the body, through being deputed to a bodily service. Since, therefore, by the sacraments, men are deputed to a spiritual service pertaining to the worship of God, it follows that by their means the faithful receive a certain spiritual character. Wherefore, Augustine says, if a deserter from the battle, through dread of the mark of enlistment on his body, throws himself on the emperor's clemency, and having besought and received mercy, return to the fight, is that character renewed? When the man has been set free and reprimanded, is it not rather acknowledged and approved? Are the Christian sacraments by any chance of a nature less lasting than a bodily mark? And so I think it's a really neat comparison here that Thomas is making, because he's comparing the sacraments to military service and going out into battle. And I think many of us don't think of it that way, that when we are marked, that means that we are going out into the church militant, and we are in battle, and we have a responsibility, right, to act upon that and engage in battle. I think that's pretty cool. All right, let's go on now to the next question that Thomas asks in the Summa, and it's related to this. He says whether a character can be blotted out from the soul. And here's, of course, the sacrament of marriage, and we know that once a marriage is, a valid marriage is given to a couple, it cannot be blotted out. Marriage is permanent, always has been, always will be. Thomas says in a sacramental character, Christ's faithful have a share in his priesthood, in the sense that as Christ has the full power of a spiritual priesthood, so his faithful are likened to him by sharing a certain spiritual power with regard to the sacraments and to things pertaining to the divine worship. For this reason, it is unbecoming that Christ should have a character, But his priesthood is compared to a character, as that which is complete and perfect is compared to some participation of itself. Now Christ's priesthood is eternal. Consequently, every sanctification wrought by his priesthood is perpetual, enduring as long as the thing sanctified endures. This is clear even in inanimate things, for the consecration of a church or an altar lasts forever unless it be destroyed. Since, therefore, the subject of a character is the soul, as to its intellective part, where faith resides, it is clear that, the intellect being perpetual and incorruptible, a character cannot be blotted out from the soul. Okay, and there's a preview of the next question that we're going to ask, but pretty interesting here is that he says, this is permanent. The character of the sacraments cannot be blotted out. It's more important than military service in the previous question that was asked. And so he also talks about how the sacraments are related to our intellect, and our intellect is permanent. Okay, our intellect is eternal in a sense, in that, even if our body dies, our soul, our intellectual soul, goes on, and I think that's what he's getting at there. Okay, so now the last article we're going to look at is Article 3, Tertia Pars, Part 3 of the Summa, Question 65, and Article 3, and he is going to ask, what is the greatest of the sacraments? What do you think he's going to say? And I want to have some fun with this and go over some of the other things that we've already talked about, because Thomas likes to rank things. He ranks the theological virtues, he ranks the cardinal virtues, the moral virtues, the angels. I mean, you name it. They're all ranked. And so let me ask you this: what do you think is the greatest of the theological virtues? Okay, you probably know this one. It's charity, right? What's the greatest of the cardinal virtues? Okay, between prudence, justice, temperance, and fortitude, the greatest of those is prudence, because it's an intellectual virtue. What's the greatest of the moral virtues? It would be justice. And who are the highest level of angels? They are the seraphim. So now Thomas is saying, okay, among the sacraments, what is the highest of the sacraments? And he says it's the Eucharist. Absolutely speaking, the sacrament of the Eucharist is the greatest of all the sacraments. This may be shown in three ways. First of all, because it contains Christ himself substantially, whereas the other sacraments contain a certain instrumental power, which is a share of Christ's power. Now, that which is essentially such is always of more account than that which is such by participation. Secondly, this is made clear by considering the relation of the sacraments to one another, for all the other sacraments seem to be ordained to this one as to their end. Thirdly, this is made clear by considering the rites of the sacraments, for nearly all the sacraments terminate in the Eucharist, as Dionysius says. Thus, those who have been ordained receive Holy Communion, as also do those who have been baptized, if they be adults. And so, one of the things that's interesting is that if you are confirmed, it's typically in a Mass, and you receive the Eucharist. If you are baptized, not always, but sometimes a baptism will be as part of a liturgy. Marriage should be, part of a Mass. And so it's all kind of pointing towards the Eucharist. And of course, it's all about Jesus Christ, and the Eucharist is Jesus Christ himself. And so Thomas also goes on, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but talks about what is the most necessary of the sacraments, and he has a different answer for that one, but I will not give that one away. Okay, so let's going to wrap these up, and thank you again for joining me. This is the final introductory video about the sacraments. Now we're going to get into baptism and confirmation, and then the Eucharist will be its own video because it's so much. And then we'll cover the other three, anointing of the sick, and matrimony, and holy orders all together. So 3 more videos on the sacraments. And again, thank you for watching. And we're going to get in after that to the last things: the death, judgment, heaven and hell, the resurrection, purgatory. It's really an interesting part of the Summa. So hope you'll stay with that. And if you have not watched all the videos, go back and catch up, because if by the end of the year you have watched all these videos, you have studied basically the entire Summa, and you will be light years ahead of the average Catholic who hasn't even picked up the Summa or read even one sentence of it. All right, thanks a lot. God bless you. Bye-bye.